Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome to the ILO and to this session, which is on priorities for action on youth employment. We have already had two excellent panels this morning, and we have a lot of important issues on the table, be it the future of work, where are the new jobs coming from, what about quality of jobs, how to anticipate the skills, what are the best strategies for the skills for the future, the rural economy, gender issue, apprenticeship, internship, a lot of very difficult issues already on the table. But in this session, which is going to be a very short session, we are going to change gears a bit, and we'll go back to the global initiative. We'll kind of, again, remind ourselves what the global initiative stands for, what are its objectives, what are the guiding principles, and then we'll zero in on the priorities for action for the global initiative, which are the priority areas that have been selected based on consultations to address the many issues that have already been discussed today. I will start quickly with a recap of the challenge that has been mentioned many times today, that globally we have many young people who are without jobs, who are unemployed. The number is 66.6 million, and here I want to make, I want to clarify that the brochure that has been distributed to all of you has the figure as 70 million, whereas now we are saying 66.6. That's only because the ILO methodology changed in January 2018. It doesn't mean that youth unemployment has come down. It simply means that we are using a slightly different methodology. But I thought it's important to say it because we have both numbers floating around. But unemployment, as many would say, is only the tip of the iceberg. In addition to the many who are unemployed, we also have many young women and men who are not in employment or education or training. This is the NEET, which is also an indicator for the SDGs. And 21.8% of all young people globally are NEET, if you compare that to the 13% who are unemployed. And amongst the NEET, again, we have a large number of women. In fact, there is a very strong gender dimension to all of this, but particularly to the NEET indicator. Now, again, as we know, unemployment is only part of the story. There are a large number of young people who are working, but who are working in jobs that are informal, that are unstable, insecure, even precarious. And as a result, at least in emerging and developing countries, we have, in addition to those who are unemployed, we have a very large number of young people who are working, but who remain poor. Now, the global initiative was really launched in 2016 to address this very major problem we have of youth employment or youth unemployment, whichever way you want to look at it. And the objective of the initiative really was to scale up action so as to enhance impact in support of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And really, we have been talking today about alliances, about partners. In the last session, we listened to the partners of the Global Initiative. And the main objective of the Global Initiative really was to bring to the table various different stakeholders who will each come with their experience, their perspective, their strategies. And together, we try to make a difference. The intention really was also, as I already highlighted this morning, to fill the gaps, to learn from each other. And the philosophy, if I may say so, is that together we achieve more, and together we are bigger than simply the sum of the parts. And the initiative recognizes the many different stakeholders. We, of course, have governments, but we also have civil society. We have our social partners. We have the private sector, foundations, parliamentarians, academia, media, etc., all working towards promoting decent jobs for youth. At the moment, we have 22 UN agencies at its nucleus, and we have various other stakeholders. You heard just now from the City Foundation and Nestle. We also have the governments of Spain and Luxembourg, and we have a number of others, such as the International Youth Organization for Ibero-America, again, We had a representative speaking in the previous session. We have ISEC, SOS Children's Village International, and Education for Employment. Last year, in November, we launched the engagement platform for the Decent Jobs for Youth. And the engagement platform really is a center, or is a platform where our partners can really upload their commitments, they can learn from each other, and there can also be a source of all the innovative solutions that are at the moment underway in relation to addressing youth employment, and the UN's annual reviews of progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals will review these commitments and will also perhaps help in their replication and increasing their scales. So as of now, we have 25 commitments from 22 partners, and very roughly this would affect about 16 million young women and men across the world. Now, signing up to the global initiative also means that you are agreeing to the guiding principles of the global initiative. And the guiding principles of the global initiative, 15 guiding principles are there, and these include such elements as gender equality, youth rights at work, youth voice, job quality, not only a question of quantity, etc. Therefore, as I already said, alliance is key to the whole idea of global initiative. But in addition to alliance, it's also about action. It is about knowledge development and sharing, and it is about leveraging resources. I've already spoken about alliance. Now let's go to action. Ultimately, whether or not we are able to make a dent on this huge problem of youth unemployment and poor quality youth employment will depend on what actions we take. And we must say that with the support from the governments of Spain and Luxembourg, we have been able to launch country-level actions at the moment in the Sahel region in Africa, but we are hoping that we'll be able to scale that up and take it to other regions of the world. Knowledge building is critical to the initiative, and a global knowledge hub is envisaged, and it's under progress. It's being developed as of now. And hopefully by the end of 2018, we will jointly develop this knowledge facility, which will bring together a wealth of information on what works, what are the innovative solutions, what we can learn from each other on this platform. And resource mobilization is also key to this initiative because we need resources, we need a lot of investment to really make a difference. And the focus of this particular meeting is also on innovative action and financing, which is the first step in that direction. Now, coming to the priority areas for alliance, action, knowledge, and resource mobilization, the initiative has already had lots of discussions over the last 2 years, and 8 areas have been identified. These relate to digital skills, quality apprenticeships, green jobs for youth, support for young people in the rural economy, facilitating the transition to the informal to the formal economy, youth entrepreneurship, and self-employment. The global initiative also targets disadvantaged youth, example, young workers between the age group of 15 to 17 who are in hazardous occupations, or those who are in fragile states affected by conflict and instability. In 2017, we also launched the 8 thematic plans of each of these thematic areas, and I'm sure you would probably have seen those plans outside. As of now, we have 7 of the 8 plans. We still don't have the one on hazardous youth, but that should be out sometime in this year. And these plans highlight what works, they identify innovative solutions, and offer concrete ideas to scale up action. And in this session, you will actually be hearing from colleagues about each of these 8 thematic areas. This is meant to be a lightning talk, so very short, really just a starter. And in the afternoon, we will go into detail in each of these areas, and there'll be a lot more chance to discuss, debate, and contribute to this. So I will now ask the first speaker, who is Mr. Kemal Husnovich, who is the Chief of Infrastructure, Enabling Environment and E-Applications Department of the International Telecommunications Union, and he will present the thematic plan on digital skills for youth. Over to you, Mr. Husnovich. You want to come here? Or you? Okay, oh, fine.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's already afternoon, so it's a pleasure to be here. Every person in this room today is a future game changer. The current mosaic of the professional world is quickly shifting due to the development in the information and communication technologies. Some old pieces are thrown out, but new ones are replacing them. Soon we will see a completely new picture of the professional world, and that picture will be created by you. The future will bring endless job opportunities for young women and men, so let me offer you a preview of what is to come. There are currently millions of unemployed young individuals and tens of millions of jobs requiring digital skills. Providing training in digital skills is an unprecedented job creation opportunity. Jobs requiring these skills have a higher earning potential. This will help employers, many of whom can't fill positions requiring advanced digital skills, and contribute to the economy in general. ITU just contributed its digital skills toolkit to the Decent Jobs for Youth global initiative. This project has already resulted in significant innovations, such as the launch of future skills training platforms to train millions of people in India and Pakistan in digital skills like the Internet of Things, cloud computing, big data, and artificial intelligence. Introducing a training for rural women in Bangladesh to become web and mobile app developers so they can work as entrepreneurs. Or the launch of a national digital literacy program for schools in Kenya to ensure that children and youth learn digital skills along with an online work platform that's employed 40,000 young people. Our research explores new models of immersive, rapid skill development known as boot camps, which develop their curriculum to respond to the employer's needs. The Digital Skills Thematic Plan opens doors and offers a role to everyone here. Join us in the Digital Skills for Decent Jobs for Youth campaign launched by ILO and ITU. This campaign focuses on incentivizing stakeholders to train 5 million young people with job-ready transferable digital skills. This collaboration led to presenting the Digital Skills Toolkit to TVET programs across Africa. It would be great to see TVET programs adopting some of the methodologies of coding boot camps, such as team programming and teaching in-demand coding languages. There is a huge role for governments, employers, and foundations to ensure that more young people have the opportunity to learn digital skills and connect to jobs. Jobs that exist and are unfilled. We can work together to become job creators, help employers to expand businesses, and create a thriving digital economy. This is what the future holds. All of these opportunities are knocking on your door. I suggest that you answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. And certainly digital skills are at the top of the employment agenda. I move now to our next speaker, Mr. Srinivas Reddy, the ILO's Chief of the Skills and Employability Branch, who will present the thematic plan on quality of education. Srinivas, you want to do it from there? Or?
Thank you. Thank you, Shakti. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, one of the growing challenges that we are facing today is the skills mismatch and providing the first work experience to young people. The challenge of the initial footing, the first work experience. And can apprenticeship be a solution is the issue that I'm going to talk about. While a large number of young people are looking for work, many employers cannot find the workers with the right skills they need. This is the mismatch which is being further accentuated significantly by the profound changes buffeting the world of work, such as technological changes, globalization, climate change, and shifts in the organization of the work, like platform economies, etc. These changes have major implications to the way that training and education is delivered, particularly the technical and vocational education and training. The traditional school-based vocational education and training systems face growing challenges to be more flexible and responsive in ensuring that young people are better equipped with the skills to take on new jobs today and in the future. Against this background, quality apprenticeships and other work-based learning programs are critical to meeting the challenge of the future of the world of work, as the learning takes place at the workplace, having the modern infrastructure and competent trainers and instructors. Apprenticeships. Increasingly, countries around the world are renewing the emphasis on apprenticeships, recognizing its potential for reducing the skills mismatch and youth unemployment. For example, the G20 countries, as well as B20 and L20, have recommended measures promoting quality apprenticeships. What is still the challenge? Despite widely perceived benefits of quality apprenticeships, many countries, particularly in the developing world, face challenges in establishing, scaling up, and sustaining the apprenticeship programs. To find some answers to some of these challenges, ILO recently launched a toolkit for quality apprenticeships that provide evidence-based advice to policymakers in establishing or reviewing apprenticeship systems. The toolkit recommends 6 building blocks for quality apprenticeships: social dialogue, regulatory framework, clear roles and responsibilities for all stakeholders, as equitable funding arrangements between governments and employers, strong labor market relevance to ensure employability of graduates, and inclusiveness are the 6 building blocks. This thematic plan under the global initiative where we are meeting today, ILO and UNESCO are co-leading this particular thematic plan on quality apprenticeships. It suggests actions at the global, regional, and country level to promote apprenticeships. At the global level, it will focus on new knowledge generation, capacity development, and advocacy, while the overarching country and the regional level goal is to establish and scale up innovative quality apprenticeship initiatives through a series of programs. To my mind, clearly apprenticeships can be a win-win for job seekers, employers, and societies to promote youth employment. Towards this end, ILO, in collaboration with OECD, GAN, and other partners, will be hosting an international conference on apprenticeships in July this year to look at some of the trends and new approaches and possible solutions, some of the innovative solutions for this particular challenge. I would like to call upon all the delegates, distinguished delegates here, constituents, development partners, and donors to join hands with us in promoting quality apprenticeships. Thank you.
Thank you, Srinivas. And again, apprenticeship is an area which is very much in demand. We have a lot of people in the house here today who can also contribute a lot to this discussion in the afternoon. I will now call upon Ms. Maria-Angels Fortuny, who's the ILO's head of the Forestry, Agriculture, Construction and Tourism Unit, to present the thematic plan on youth in the rural economy. Again, an area we have heard a lot about and mentioned several times already this morning. Maria-Angels?
Thanks, Suki. So why action is needed for youth in the rural economy? About 88% of the world's youth live in developing countries, and despite rapid urbanization, many still live in rural areas. Young people in rural areas can be powerful catalysts for change. Such demographic dividend is indeed a unique opportunity to advance rural economies and shape rural transformation. However, recent work deficits among rural youth, including unemployment and particularly working poverty, are of great concern. Limited opportunities to quality education and training and to access to land, credit and markets hampers their transition to decent work. Women, Young women make up 40% of the agricultural workforce in the developing world. Many work without pay for a family enterprise and shoulder a disproportionate amount of unpaid care and household work. Their work is very largely unrecognized and undervalued. Access to decent work in rural areas is imperative for boosting the role of youth as agents of change, for their meaningful participation in rural economies, and above all, for meeting youth aspirations. Decent jobs for youth contributes to SDG 8 on full and productive employment and decent work, and in turn it's instrumental for achieving SDGs 1, 2, and 5 to end poverty, hunger, and achieve gender equality. The thematic plan identifies 6 main areas of intervention to boost youth employment in the rural economy. First, promoting rural economic diversification and investments in agricultural development to contribute to the process of a structural transformation of rural economies. Second, improving young people's access to productive resources such as land, finance, information, and technology within and beyond agriculture. Third, empowering young women socially, economically, and politically. Fourth, creating an enabling business environment that attracts investment and that stimulates a competitive private sector. Fifth, skills training and addressing skills shortages to increase productivity and facilitate this rural transformation. And finally, greening the rural economy. So in terms of concrete action for partners, we have identified 2 levels, at institutional level and secondly, through direct support to young people. So at institutional level, action proposed is to support integrated policy approaches and strategic programs at national and local levels. This can include sectoral policies, employment-friendly macroeconomic policies, and effectively tailored employment services in rural areas. National public and private institutions, including ministries of agriculture, youth, labor, producers' organizations, as well as youth groups, need to be engaged. Also at the institutional level, governments very much need support in efforts to create this enabling and inclusive business environment to attract investment in rural areas. Therefore, national level reforms of business environment focusing on policies, on laws, on regulations are crucial. So in terms of direct support to young people, there are 4 areas. First of all, efficient and innovative training approaches to align young people's skills with the demand for rural labor. And in this respect, agripreneurship modules will be introduced, for example, in educational curricula. Secondly, facilitating efficient agribusiness, value chains, and entrepreneurship models. Here, for example, the transition from school into rural labor markets will be facilitated through one-stop shops where young people can have access to training, employment services, credit advice, etc. Thirdly, ensuring that initiatives provide rural youth, and in particularly rural young women, with access to resources such as land, technology, and finance. For example, young people's access to land can be ensured with land grants and leases through youth agricultural associations or cooperatives. Finally, the initiative will promote environmentally friendly activities in agriculture and develop training in the use of green agricultural technologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Marindas, and thanks also for bringing up the question of pro-employment macroeconomic policies for rural employment for young people. And from the rural economy, we move to the green jobs for youth, a subject that's closely connected and also one that is extremely important in the context of sustainable development. I call upon Mr. Vic Van Vuren, ILO's Director of Enterprise Department, to present the thematic plan on green jobs for youth. Vic.
Thank you, Sukti. I think we need to start at the macro level and do a bit of a reality check of what we're dealing with. The world faces 2 big challenges, social and environmental, when we really pull it down to 2 big areas. And the world has lost the plot. When I was at school, I got taught about a PC, and one would think it's a personal computer, and also got taught how to spell. Now I move around the world and I see that PC means power and corruption, and profit is now spelled G-R-E-E-D. Now these are some of the challenges that we're dealing with when we start looking at future scenarios, and we need to get real about when we tackle these subjects, that we don't lose sight of the reality of what we're dealing with. The value proposition that the youth are looking for is an exciting one. They're looking for a new value proposition that brings in components of social, economic, and environmental components. And if we can follow that path, then we'll be successful in how we implement things. I'm going to focus, obviously, on the green economy. We must start by recognizing that climate change is a cross-cutting development issue that affects every aspect of sustainable development. The majority of the world's youth, 1.2 billion, find themselves in developing countries, and that is where natural resources and persistent poverty find themselves the most. Their jobs or even prospects for employment are dependent on the activities that are threatened by the overuse of natural resources and climate change. So what are green jobs? Green jobs are in the green sector, such as sustainable agriculture, but also in the greening of industrial processes, value chain development, and global supply chains. Green jobs contribute to addressing the environment, the social, and the economic aspects that we're talking about. They unleash new potential for job creation and have huge potential going forward. The good news is that young women and men are already driving innovation in green jobs for youth. Let's look at a few examples. In the energy sector, renewable energy employs about 10 million people in 2016, and many jobs there are for young people. Mcopa Solar, a company in East Africa, is an example of this. In agriculture, FAO estimated that by 2050, the global employment gains could be up to 362 million to 630 million jobs. Huge potential. But are we going to be able to exploit that? Young entrepreneurs are using information and communication technologies to modernize farming, enhance productivity, and make the sector more enhancing to young people. Tech Innov, a company based in Niger, West Africa, is using a digital company to perform irrigation and manage farm operations. The founder, a young local entrepreneur, was a laureate of the International Exhibition of Interventions of Geneva in 2012. Last example is market system approaches. Trabala project in Mozambique is a good example of this. So greening the economy does not automatically translate into decent jobs for young people, but there's also a key role in policy development. Governments have a key role in providing a regulatory environment for this to happen. Without that is a challenge. Where is our biggest Achilles heel? And we hear it over and over again. We are providing unemployable youth for the needs of the future economy. Education systems in our countries have to be overhauled to meet the requirements of the future markets in both the green and other parts that we've been talking about today. I think I've said enough. I think what we do need to do is give the youth a voice. We need to coordinate and have joint initiatives. We need to have a thematic priority on green jobs for youth with initial engagement of places like the FAO, ILO, UN Environment, and UNDP. And we need to give the given a voice in places like promoting awareness and raising campaigns, such as the UN Environment Young Champion of the Earth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vic. Thanks also for that reality check and for bringing to the table the question of regulation, which is so important if you're talking about decent jobs for youth, as well as youth voice and partnering with young youth organizations themselves. From green jobs to youth, we'll move to the subject of youth entrepreneurship and self-employment. And I would like to now ask Mr. Ashish Shah, Director of the Division of Country Programs at the International Trade Center, to present the thematic plan on youth entrepreneurship and self-employment. You would like a microphone? Oh, you come over? Yeah, whatever. No, maybe you have to turn it on.
Okay. Can you hear me at the back? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sukti. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies. Let me start by saying I am not young anymore, but I look like a young entrepreneur. And that is because my job today is to convince all of you why you need to invest in youth entrepreneurship. So I'm not here to speak about the hundreds of thousands of young people who are on their way marching through the Sahel to come to Europe. I'm here to talk about the role of youth entrepreneurship and the role youth entrepreneurship can play in creating a brighter tomorrow. So I have a tagline for today. You all know about TED Talks. I love TED Talks, but I think it's time to act. So my slogan for today, keep this, just retain these two words. is not TED Talk, but TED Act. Now, you must be wondering, what is this TED Act about? So, let me start with the T, or let me say the TED part is about why you need to invest in youth entrepreneurship. The T is for technology and innovation. We've heard a lot about technology and innovation today, but the fact of the matter is that it is young entrepreneurs who are the people who embrace technology, who embrace innovation, and as you know, technology and innovation are the key drivers of societal transformative change moving forward. So if you want to accelerate the achievement of the SDGs, you need to invest in young entrepreneurs. The E of the TED is for employment. This is very well known. Young entrepreneurs employ young people. The average age at Mark Zuckerberg's famous Facebook is 28. And that is because he is a young entrepreneur and he believes in employing young people. And the D of the TED is about development impact. I truly believe that if you invest in young entrepreneurs, we are bound to have development impact in the long run. And that is because young entrepreneurs are the people who have a long-term view of things. Young entrepreneurs are the people who believe in inclusive growth, who believe in shared value, and young entrepreneurs are the people who are finally going to become the social entrepreneurs of tomorrow. It is not a surprise that 95% of social entrepreneurs today are young entrepreneurs who believe in doing good and doing business at the same time and helping to achieve the SDGs. So that's the part, the TED part of it. And now about the act. Yes, it is time to act. We all need to act together. The A of the act is for access. It's access to information, access to technology, access to finance, and access to markets. These are the four key issues where young entrepreneurs need to be supported and have access to these four things. The C is for conducive. We need to create a conducive policy, legal, and institutional environment. A conducive policy environment is very simple. Create policies which are pro-entrepreneurship and pro-youth. When it comes to legal issues, it's also very simple. Let's have laws which help young entrepreneurs start startups and in a way benefit from the laws through incentives which have been made for them. And when it comes to institutional support, yes, incubators are good, but we need to focus on accelerators. So we need to provide a holistic range of services for young entrepreneurs through accelerators. So that was the C. And finally, the T. The T is obviously for training and skills development. Now, a lot has been said about skills, about training today, but I cannot overemphasize the need to develop skills. 2 points to remember when it comes to skills, though. Firstly, developing skills needs to be market-led. The market is looking for a very specific set of hard skills and power skills or soft skills, as many of you have said today. What we need to do is make sure that the skills we are developing is market-led. And this includes, of course, building young entrepreneurs who have a very high emotional quotient and a very high spiritual quotient. And the second point to remember when it comes to training and skills development is that the conventional ways of training is a matter of the past. We have to look for approaches to move from training to learning. There are many new approaches out there: peer-to-peer support, mentor-mentee learning, shared learning, digital learning. These are new approaches which we will need to embrace if we want to move forward. I want to leave you with one last thought before I conclude. We heard earlier that there are 70 million young boys, men and women who are looking for a job today. But guess what? If we would collectively build together and create 10 Jack Ma's in every country of the world, only 10 Jack Ma's of Alibaba fame in every country of the world, we would be creating 100 million new jobs for young men and women. Thank you very much.
And indeed, I think word act is key, because we have to walk the talk and we have to act if you really want to make a difference. And I hope we are able to create more Jack Ma's. Let's now move to youth in fragile situations. Again, a topic that has come up again and again in the discussions this morning. And I'm going to ask Mr. Donato Pasagli, ILO Senior Specialist for Crisis Response, to present the thematic plan on youth in fragile situations.
Thank you, Sukti.
I skipped. No, it's okay.
There's been a change in order.
It's a change in order. I got so
Priorities
inspired.
change sometimes. Well, as we speak, 400 million people, 400 million young people, aged between 15 and 29, actually struggle in conflict-affected countries, in hard places, where, these people try also to get a job. This means 1 out of 4 among young people that is affected by violence or armed conflict in some way. We know the situation. All conflicts do not die. New conflicts are coming up, are arising every day. There has been a tremendous spike in the last 20 years. Violence in urban settings, in particular, has tripled in the last 8 years. So youth suffer from alienation and marginalizations, especially in these fragile settings. It is evident that fragility and youth unemployment are linked in a vicious cycle. On one hand, youth employment challenges is further exacerbated by fragility. In fact, living in fragile situations often means that it is even harder for them to gain access to employment opportunities. Those who get a job often have a lower quality job, a job that is affected by conditions of discrimination, of unfair treatment, sometimes exploitation. On the other hand, youth unemployment and decent work deficit intensify fragility, as youth unemployment may affect well-known drivers of conflict, such as grievances over unfair exclusion of young people or particular ethnic groups among them. Investing in decent jobs for youth in fragile situations has the potential to break this cycle and can ultimately ensure that no one is left behind, according to the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. In front of transforming political and societal landscapes, there is a need to anticipate change and to minimize risks, offering more opportunities for quality work. Innovative approaches to promoting employment under difficult circumstances include, among others, the use of new technologies, technology transfer, to facilitate skills training for hard-to-reach youth, crafting of new partnerships between public and private stakeholders, and integration and sequencing of localized intervention in a strategic manner. Also, a better educational system attuned to needs and aspiration of young people can make the difference. The goal of the global initiative work on youth in fragile situations, which is co-led by ILO and UNDP, is to facilitate such global and national innovative efforts. This thematic group on youth and fragile situations enhances the evidence base on the links between youth, employment, peace, resilience, and displacements, and will also concentrate on which interventions are showing to be more effective, makes this knowledge accessible online, and facilitates evidence take-up for improved programming and monitoring. Decent jobs for youth will promote concrete country-level interventions focused on employability, entrepreneurship, and direct job creation for youth in fragile situations. On the policies and institutional level, decent jobs for youth will assist policymakers, workers and employers, organizations and other national stakeholders in designing and implementing solutions to the youth employment challenge in further context, and integrating youth employment policies into national efforts for prevention, recovery, and peace building. This is in line with Recommendation 205 for employment, decent work, and resilience that has been passed last summer by the ILO conference. Therefore, we may say that a mind shift from policymakers is required. Youth, as we know, are not just spoilers, are not just a threat to stability, but are an asset. Paternalistic approaches do not work, but we need to improve participation and intergenerational collaboration. Our purpose is also to instill a culture of peaceful coexistence among people, among young people. So all these questions and how our work is moving forward to enhance the evidence base of our programs will be discussed this afternoon in a specific thematic session on youth employment for peace and resilience. You are all invited to hear from our colleagues what these proposals are and how we're moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Geneva. And many in the institutions are working in informal employment. And we pass on now to the next speaker, Mr. Frédéric Lepere. He's the ILO's head of the Informal Economy Unit, as well as the officer in charge for the Development Investment Branch. And he will present the thematic plan on youth transitioning to the formal economy. Fred.
Thank you very much, Shukti. Good afternoon, everybody. If I understood well the exercise, I have 3 minutes to provide you an appetizer for the session at 3 on youth transition into the formal economy. That's good timing, as it's lunchtime. So I hope you will be many joining us. Now, if you look at the world of work for young people, it's the informal economy. It's informal employment. Almost, we will provide and we will publish soon a new update with statistics on informal employment. Overall, 75% of young people in the labor force are in informal employment. In Africa, there are 93% in informal employment. So we could think, yeah, but it's better a job than no jobs. Or let's think about, the working life cycle. They will start with informal job and then they will get a formal job. But what we see and what we know, it's two big problems. From a static perspective, for young people, like for the others who are trapped in the informal employment, they have to face acute decent work deficit, unhealthy and dangerous working conditions, working poverty, the lack of capacity to organize themselves to protect their rights and have a voice. So it's a huge challenge. And from a dynamic perspective, when you are trapped as a young people in informal employment, it's very difficult to get a formal employment. It's much easier to get a first formal job than to enter informal employment and try to get formal employment. That's why, in the new SDGs and SDG 8, especially on inclusive growth and decent work, you have a new indicator on on informal employment, and member states have to show some results in terms of informal employment and the decrease of informal employment. And that's when the recommendation 204 was adopted by the ILC in 2015. And this recommendation 204 provides guiding principles and policy guidelines to facilitate this transition from the informal to the formal, with a strong focus on young people. And you have two main strategies if you want to move and to provide formal employment to young people. First, you have to provide inclusive growth. You have to provide jobs and formal jobs. So you have to work on macroeconomic sectoral policies in a way to provide jobs for new entrants into the labor market. Because if they have no opportunities, they will have to find a job in informal employment, and it will be very difficult to move out from informal employment with all the acute decent work deficit linked to that. Then you have also, for those young people who are trapped in informal employment, you have to find the right policy framework to move them out from informal employment. And for that, you have two main strategies. You have to formalize employment, how you can protect workers, formalize employment relationships, give them rights, and better working conditions, and you have to formalize economic units, because in developing countries especially, you have so many young entrepreneurs having informal economic units who would like, for most of them, to move in the formal economy, but they can't because of some obstacles, because of the lack of the enabling environment to move out from informality. So in this session this afternoon, we will come back on this recommendation 204, and we will come back on innovative approaches and policy framework to move out from informality all those young people and to provide formal employment to young people. Thank you very much.
Now we pass on to our final speaker, Ms. Beate Andres, ILO's Chief of the Fundamental Principles and Rights at Work branch, and she will present the work on youth in hazardous occupations. Andre? Beate. Sorry.
Many thanks, Sukti, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I realize that I'm the last speaker between you and lunch, and in addition, my presentation will focus on risks and human rights violations, so I very much hope that this does not spoil the overall optimistic and positive outlook of this panel. But I think a few notes of or words of caution are important in this context. Because when we speak about youth employment, we should remember that at the lower end of the spectrum, the age group 15 to 17, we are actually talking about children. And those children are specifically at risk of hazardous work. And hazardous work has been, for children of this age, has been also described as a worst form of child labor enshrined in the ILO's child labor conventions as well as in the UN conventions on the rights of the child. So I would like to say a few words about the scale of the problem, but also the solutions. So first of all, we should acknowledge progress has been made in the last 20 years. The overall numbers of children in child labor have declined, but we still have more than 72 million of girls and boys in hazardous, specifically in hazardous child labor. And of those, about half are of the age of 15 to 17 years old. This means they have the age to work, but they are at a particular risk. They often carry too heavy weights, they use dangerous tools or machinery, they suffer from extreme temperatures, and a lot of this takes place in the rural economy, and we already heard about the challenges there. And many of the consequences we don't see immediately. They often show up years later and leave those young people, in the worst cases, disabled, but in many cases, disempowered and weak. So what are the solutions and maybe also the innovative practices we have seen emerging? First of all, I'd like to refer to the recent campaign we've launched with our colleagues from the Occupational Health and Safety, the Generation Safe and Healthy. I hope you've seen some of the posters when you came into the building. This campaign was launched on the Safe Day on 28th of April. So we are joining forces to focus in particular on prevention. A lot in the past, I think, has focused on following up on risks once they've been identified, but the focus here is actually to empower young people and enable themselves to become agents of change. Working with youth ambassadors, involving them in discussions in the workplace, together with trade unions and employers, to help them understand risks, but also find solutions, concrete solutions in the workplace. So please, if you're interested in the campaign, it will continue. It will be also a focus of the World Day Against Child Labor on the 12th of June. And we hope that many activities will also take place at the national level to promote this campaign. Second, I'd like to follow up on what my colleague Maria Angel said on the rural economy. We have also worked very closely with the FAO to promote OSH and a culture of prevention in what is called model farms. Model farms have been developed by the FAO, and they provide a very good entry point for learning, but again also for involving young people in particular in addressing health and safety risks. And finally, I would like to mention the Child Labour Platform, which is a joint initiative of the ILO and the UN Global Compact, co-chaired by the ITUC and IOE, and it's a business engagement platform. It invites private companies to work with us on concrete solutions on hazardous child labour, as well as child labour more broadly. And through the Child Labour Platform, we have been able to work, again, in concrete solutions also in the informal economy, on recycling, for instance, in the rural sector, cocoa plantations, just to name a few. So if those here in the room who are from the private sector are interested, please look for the Child Labour Platform. This is another space where those issues can be addressed. And finally, just a word of thanks to our colleagues from the Youth Employment Programme. I think it's a great opportunity to be working together and hopefully also to develop this specific focus on OSH further in this initiative. Thank you.
And thanks to all our speakers for the appetizers that they have served us. And in the afternoon, as I said before, we'll have more, you have the opportunity to go more in depth into each of these 8 thematic areas. I know it's time for lunch, so we'll close, and I invite you to join us for lunch at the